or a female, can you guess who manages their time well? And if you want to know how time affects your money, you need to stay until the end of this episode. Listen to each and everything that my guest has to say. Mark, can you introduce yourself?
I'm Mark Ellwood. I'm based in Toronto, Canada. I'm a productivity expert. I invented a small electronic device that employees use to track how they spend their time. So I've got a lot of data about time use. I also do some training and facilitation work as well.
Okay, well, I want to welcome you to Bartelle's Money Talk. I am sure the information that you're going to provide is going to be very impactful because everyone is trying to figure out this time management thing. So can you tell us a little bit about your research and what you found?
Well, the device, for those who are watching, is here. This is a time quarter device. This is the current version. I invented that, a previous version, way back around 35 years ago. So I've been doing corporate time studies. Corporations pay me to do a time study on their employees. And by the way, it's a lot of fun. People enjoy it. We get a huge participation rate because it's all anonymous. We never use individuals' names. So I've got about 500,000 hours of data that I've gathered over the years. And it's quite a substantial amount of time use data about how time is spent in the workplace. So that's my basis for my expertise, you might say.
Okay. And so my curiosity is, what in the world made you want to study time? Was there something that affected your life? Why did you want to study time?
I often tell the story about when I was a little kid delivering newspapers. And the first thing is that the newspaper, and people probably don't know much about newspapers, but there was a paper and then a weekend insert, a colored magazine, and the two had to be put together. And in the depot in Mrs. Smith's basement, I watched the other guys, and boy, they were slow. And I just found a fast way to put those things together. Later, I invested in technology. I bought a wagon. I managed to figure out how to take fewer steps by folding the papers and throwing them. And then I batched some jobs. Instead of going to collect from customers every single week, I divided the route in half. So on weeks 1 and 3, I went to half of the people, and 2 and 4 the other half. And that saved me a lot of collecting time. I don't know where that came from. I guess I just wanted to get back and study or play tennis or have fun or hang out with friends or something. But that genesis for thinking about productivity started way back when I was a paper boy, trying to be as efficient with my time as possible.
Well, that is amazing, because I was thinking, why would he be interested in time management? And so your tool, when you go into corporations, exactly what are you measuring? Like how long it takes for them to perform an activity?
Yes, there's a series of buttons A to Z, and we program those. So button letter A is for making a sales call, and number B is for customer service, and 3 is doing paperwork, and so on. So every time you begin a new activity, you just press one single button. It's kind of like a chess clock. Chess clocks are only 2, but we got 25 or 50 or whatever number of activities. And instead of the time counting downwards, it's adding up. So it's a series of stopwatches, only one of which can be on at a time. It's just a little less complicated to use than a doorbell. So easy to use, fun for employees to do. They can see their own results as they go with the device. And so companies are paying me because they want to understand, where is all the time going? During COVID, there were a lot of people measuring stuff, and employees didn't like that because it seemed like Big Brother. Mine is not, because it's anonymous and it's about improving results, not about being a policeman. But people didn't like that stuff. And also, mine is much more granular. We're measuring the things that they need to be doing, and also we're measuring the things that get in the way of their productivity. The other thing is, during COVID, people say, what do we care about time use as long as people get their stuff done? Yes, but if you're spending 2 hours a day on paperwork and someone over there is only spending an hour a day on paperwork, then maybe there's something that they're doing a little bit differently. And if we can understand that and measure that and then try and reduce that, then people can be more productive. That's my measure of productivity. Are you spending a higher amount of time on your largest or highest priority tasks versus reducing the amount of administrative time? That's my definition of productivity.
Okay, and that is so good. So when you go into these companies, and so we are Bartelle's Money Talk. We talk about money all the time. So many times when you have someone, if they are not producing well, they actually look like a poor performer, which also affects their evaluation, which also affects raises and bonuses. So does your tool help people better manage their time so that they will be a better candidate for a raise.
So again, it's anonymous. So we're not evaluating people. We're not doing any of that. There's other ways to do that, and managers should
Okay.
do that. I'm looking at a typical employee and what they're doing, not looking at any individuals. You mentioned
Okay.
money, and I just want to do a little digression here. There are
Okay.
3 areas of life that I think people are kind of embarrassed about and know where they want to be going with their lives and have trouble. So one is, I'll call it body image. Oh man, I ate a whole bucket of ice cream last night, or I didn't eat well, or a whole bunch of fried food, and I'm overweight, or I'm not in shape, and so people know what they need to do. And so sometimes tracking what, your eating habits is a very useful thing, weighing yourself, seeing how long it takes to run a mile or whatever. So the tracking makes sense. The second area is my area, which is time management. And if you can measure where you're spending your time, then you can become more productive by analyzing that and seeing where the time goes. The third is your area, money. And people, and all of your guests and you talk about this all the time, that people don't know where the money goes, or they're struggling, or they're just having trouble with all that. And so if you're to measure where your money goes for a week or 2 or 3 weeks or a month, then you say, gee, I'm spending a lot on coffee every day, or I'm a lot on taxi cabs or Uber, whatever it might be. And so that awareness can help in each of our areas: body image, time management, and yours, which is money management, and create a greater awareness so that then you can use that as a basis for achieving the goals you want to do with money or time or body image. They're all kind of
right. And see, that's fascinating. And so, like with your tool, a lot of people now are kind of like in a panic, and they think maybe that their managers might be micromanaging them, or even if you bring your tool in, they are afraid that if they're not producing well, they could lose their jobs.
Not with ours. No, because we're saying we don't care about your names. We want to look at you as an example. And we're going to measure 40 different sales reps. And I'm reporting on, here's the average sales rep, or here's top performers, all anonymous. So we're just looking at the typical job and what that looks like. Again, managers can do their own evaluations of how people are performing. I'm looking at the average for the whole group. And so then I rarely study individual jobs or individual people. It's this group average. I'm trying to show, on the whole, they're spending 35% of their time on administration. If you can get that down to 20%, that's a whole extra hour or hour and a half per day that they can spend on their top priority activities.
Well, I bet you companies love to have you come in because you can save the day.
I hope so. There is a bit of a challenge I've realized recently, is that employees are getting free labor. If employees themselves are working 46 hours per week, which is the average that I've calculated, and that includes a bit of personal time, and some are working overtime. In fact, they're only contracted for 42 or thereabouts. The company is getting an extra 4 or 5 hours of extra labor at no cost. And so they tend to not want to reduce that. The problem is, as I mentioned, there's a whole pile of time on administrative tasks. There's burnout, there's turnover, and all those things have a large cost. So that's the reason for employers to do these studies, is to realize where all that wasted time is going, and to help people with work-life balance and stress levels and so on, because that free labor does come at a cost.
Right. Look, especially for the employee. Yes, because you get burnt out really quick, and we don't want to provide free labor. And so my next thing that I want to dive into is that your research. You need to tell the listeners what you found in your research that you've done.
Well, I go to a lot of time use conferences, and we look at differences between men and women, and they're quite pronounced in the household. Women in Western countries tend to do more of domestic work. So it's cleaning and childcare and shopping and household tasks. And so I thought, well, what's that like in the workplace? I've got a lot of data in the workplace. So I took my large database and I split it in half based on names of people. So Sally and Mary were there, and Jim and Harold were over there. So I split up the database, and I wanted to see, are there differences? And I found out that indeed there are differences between men and women. I found 4 major differences, and that led me to conclude that women are better at managing their time than men. Ooh. The first of those 4 is that women work fewer hours. So this is knowledge worker jobs. This isn't factory work or delivery people or whatever. It's sales reps and service reps and managers and such. And so the men are somewhere around 47 hours per week, and
Mhm.
men are around 44 hours per week. There's a difference of about 3 hours. So first of my 4 findings, women are working fewer hours than men. Now you might ask, why is that?
That's right.
Some are busy mothers. And guess we talked about the domestic time being higher. Well, guess who's got to get home and pick up the kids from daycare or make dinner or take care of the kids or whatever? It's the women often, not all,
Yeah,
but many of
but
them.
most of the
So
time.
they
Mhm.
need to be efficient at work to be able to get home to take care of kids. They can't stay around all night to work long overtime hours.
That's good to know. And so you mentioned 4. So that
Yes,
was one.
that's one. The second one is probably the most important from a time management perspective, is that they spend more of their time on their highest priority activities. Now, if you
Mhm.
read time management books, there's often something called the Eisenhower matrix, and they talk about urgent and important activities. And Stephen
Mhm.
Covey talked about this. You should be spending your time on important but not urgent activities, that quadrant. But none of the authors really defined that. And I thought, well, maybe I can. So it
Uh-huh.
just happens that when I do these studies, I do a short questionnaire in advance. And I
Mhm.
ask people 4 questions. And one of them is, what are the most important things you need to do in your job? So if you ask a sales rep, they'll tell you I service orders or I put the orders through, I do some paperwork. But the number one thing they do or say that they should do is prospecting for new business. Okay,
Oh, yes.
that's their urgent, that's their important but not urgent
Yeah.
activity.
Uh-huh.
So I did
Mhm.
that for 13 major jobs. And then I said, okay, well, let's map how much time is spent on those things. On average, it's only about 20%. Now, some people talk about the 20-80 rule. That's never really been quantified. It's just coincidental that the number is the same. But most knowledge workers are spending 20% of their time on these high priority tasks. You think, well, only 20? Yes, because they're doing administrative work, they're traveling, they're doing personal stuff,
Mhm.
they're processing orders, whatever. So the 20% on their top priority activities. Now, women are at 22%, men are only at 18%. So women on the whole are spending more of their time and working fewer hours on their highest priority activities. Successful people get up to around 30 or 35%, but the average is only 20. So women are doing a better job at spending time on their highest priority activities, my definition of productivity, than are men. Good on them.
That's wonderful, wonderful. And so we got number 2. Okay,
Number
what's number
three,
3?
number three is that they're actually doing things faster. Now,
Wow.
there are some things that you want to take your time on. I've got some
Mhm.
data that says if you spend more time in a sales meeting with a possible customer, then that's
Mhm.
good, probing for needs and finding out more
Mhm.
information and so on. But on the whole, you want to be doing things faster. And so we track the durations of activities. On the whole, it's about 18 minutes.
Mhm.
Men are at 22 minutes, women are at 16. So women are changing activities and finishing them faster every 16 minutes. Men are slower at 22. The fourth of these findings is we ask about their ideal profile. Where would you ideally like to be? And it turns out, through a complicated series of calculations, women are closer to their ideal profiles than men by about 3 hours per week. So they're doing a better job of that across a large number of different activities, not just that main one, selling.
Mhm.
Across all of their activities, they're closer to their ideal. And so those 4 reasons or findings led me to conclude that women are doing a better job managing their time than men. I'll just answer your next question is why is that? It's
Yeah.
one, I said that they've got to get home and do those domestic tasks.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
possible also that the work that they do, I'll just say domestically, and because many of them are mothers,
Mhm.
some of those skills are transferable to the workplace. There's a lot of things going on. They have to make quick decisions. They've got to move quick.
Yes.
And so it's possible that some of those are translatable. There's another one that I thought about but didn't really explore, which is, are there brain differences? And I'll leave that to other people to get into the details. But are men better at certain types of tasks and women better at others? There's some possibilities there. I looked up some research, but it's hard to conclude anything. That might suggest a difference as well.
Okay, and then as I sat here and listened to your reasons, one thing that popped into my mind is because most of us women, we are domesticated, and with us being domesticated, we can multitask. And men, I think sometimes they struggle with multitasking. They almost have to just focus in and dial in. And so maybe because we can multitask, maybe we can get stuff done a little bit faster. Or is that
Well,
not correct?
that's an interesting conclusion that you've come to. I like the data. And so the data,
Okay.
certainly in the workplace, is
Mhm.
giving certain indications about how women work. And so that does support what you're saying. And what I'm trying to do is provide some evidentiary support to the things that people say, sort of common sense or observations. All right, but what's the data say? So I think I've got some good findings from a large database over quite a number of years that supports the kind of things that you've concluded.
Well, wonderful, wonderful. And now, because we are Bartelle's Money Talk, and I love talking about money and I love learning about money, Mr. Mark. So now I want you to relate what you found with your research with time management. How can we relate that to time and money?
Well, time is money, as they say.
Right.
I invented the time quarter because I was worried about all the time that we were spending waiting for a meeting to start. And I thought, well, if you add up everyone's salary and multiply it by the 10 or 12 minutes we've been waiting, that adds up to a lot of money.
Wow.
Note that people say time is money. I think often people value money more. And so lots of people, and again, this is kind of guessing here, will concern themselves and drive across the city to save $1 on, toilet paper or something like that. But the time cost of driving across the city or wherever they've got to go is quite substantial. And so people tend to not value their time as much as their money. But successful people do. And then what they do is they say, well, my money is worth it, so I'm going to hire a babysitter to help, or a gardener to help, or I'm going to hire someone in Fiverr to do some tasks for me. Not everybody has those choices, unfortunately. So they have to rely, if they don't have the money to buy themselves time, they use other resources. So they use their family. So you get your kids to do some of the household tasks. Or your neighbors, you rely on the neighbors, or your church. And so what happens is people with time poverty, because they're working 2 or 3 jobs and really pressed for time, then some emergency happens, they have to take a child to the hospital. That's when they can't hire the babysitter or someone. So they need to rely on extended family or the community or their neighbors or something like that. So you need to have those extra resources in your life, whether that's a little pile of money somewhere or whether it's some of those other community-based resources. That's how you can manage your time when it gets to a bit of a pinch point and that you find you're out of time because you're taking care of somebody at the hospital or an emergency or whatever.
Well, you said a word, Mark, that I will not ever forget. And I just want you to talk about it just a little bit more because it's a hard word. You said the word time poverty. I have never heard that term before. And I think today, in the day and time that we're living in, if you could just speak on that just a little bit more, because that's a serious term. I've never heard that before.
Well, economists certainly spend a lot of time measuring income poverty, right? In income level, a basket of goods and whether people can afford that and housing costs and so on. That's not my world. But in the world of time measurement, we've kind of adopted that sense of time poverty. And it's for people, again, who are working 2 jobs and they've got 3 kids and maybe they're a single parent. Doesn't matter. You've got a lot of pressures going on in your life. The advice I'd give to them is try to find some extra time and don't push yourself to the limit, because those emergency activities, they will come up. You will need extra time for this or that urgent thing that happens. But what we find is that sense of time poverty is people who just don't have any extra discretionary time. I did do a study of mothers of young children, and I found there was a lot of discretionary time. People were doing personal fitness or watching television or doing spiritual time, meditation, reading a book, whatever. The thing is, for those mothers, it tends to come in little bits and pieces. There's aren't stretches. You can't go and play golf for 5 hours, but you can book for 15 minutes. So time is there, and so we make choices about how we're going to use it. Are you spending time on the internet or watching television, or are you doing something that's more personally fulfilling, or are you devoting it to family? One thing I found amongst young mothers, because I studied them a couple of times, is for those who said they were making time for themselves, doing some of the activities I talked about, gardening, reading, meditation, spiritual time, they felt that they were better mothers, had a higher quality of life score, and felt less rushed. So if you're feeling guilty because you've got 3 children who need your attention, do spend some time on yourself. You deserve it. You are worth it. And that will give you the peace of mind to make you a better parent. Children, they'll get the time they need, but you also need to make time for yourself. And that's a powerful message for men and women.
Well, that was so powerful. And so that's one of the things that I love. Like when you talk about money, you talk about time, and you talk about other things that matter to people in their lives. Those are heart issues. Like those are point issues. And today, our world is moving so fast. Time management is so important. But like you said, we can also put ourselves in time poverty. I'm going to have to start using that term. But we're going to have to figure out ways how we can get some of our time back and make better choices, because sometimes watching TV, honestly, is a waste of time. But everyone has to decide that for themselves.
Well, yeah, listen, there's good reasons to just relax and veg out. But if you find you're doing 4 or 5 hours in an evening, maybe that's a little on the high side. So by tracking that, and you don't have to hire me to track it, you can do it on your own, pencil, paper, or something. But look at where your time is going, and you might say, gee, I could make some changes there and spend more time on family or on myself or the things that are to me, or career, education.
Wonderful. Well, okay, Mark, before we say see you later, can you give the audience, our salespeople, our listeners, people that work from home, can you give us some points or some ideas on what we can do to manage our time better so that we can be more productive?
Well, I always like the idea of helping people with a daily to-do list. Write down what you're going to do today. It affects the past, the present, and the future. The future, here's what I'm going to do. The present, what do I need to be doing now? And the past, at the end of the day, you can look at your list and check it off and say, well, I got that done and that done. And it's a great sense of satisfaction. I urge people to start with a blank slate, nothing on your list at all, and ask yourself, well, if I had nothing to do today, what would I do to affect my results a month from now? Oh, well, at work, I would work on some sales calls, or I'd install that new computer system, or I'd hire a new employee or something. And so those become your highest priority activities. Make time for those first. Don't do all the emails and meetings first. Make time for those high priority activities first. Things that affect your results a month from now. And once you fill those in on your to-do list, then fill in all the other stuff afterwards. But make time for the most important priorities first. That's how I define a priority. Things that affect your results a month from now.
That's beautiful. And so now, if someone wants to reach out to you, can you please give us your contact information? How can we find you?
So my website is called getmoredone.com. Just like it sounds, getmoredone. There's a contact page on there, and you can send me a note, and no obligation, no pitches, nothing. If you'd like, I'll send you one of my articles about putting a priority on your time. I'd be happy to send that along to your listeners and viewers.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me on Bartelle's Money Talk. It has been a pleasure having you. And again, I will never forget the term that you've taught me, time poverty. So thank you so much, and I look forward to hosting you again.
You bet. Bye for now.
All right. Bye-bye.